Hi everyone. Today is our first community voices of the semester and our first premiere. Look at that. Okay, let's start all over again. Welcome to the premiere edition of Community Voices, a new series highlighting inspiring individuals who are making a difference in our communities. In this first Community Voices, we are delighted to speak with Chichi Armstrong, co-founder of Ladies Let's Talk and a close friend of mine. Ladies Let's Talk is a nonprofit dedicated to helping refugee and immigrant women improve their English skills and find a sense of belonging in their community. Chichi's journey shows that it's never too late to follow your passions, from a career in Xerox to pursuing jazz, piano after retirement, and finally founding LLT. Chichi exemplifies creativity, courage, and commitment serving others. Today, we'll explore her story, the impact of LLT, and ways our community can get involved and support this important work. Today's title is Never Too Late to Belong, a conversation with Chichi Armstrong, co-founder of Ladies Let's Talk. All right, Chichi, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, let's see. I'll start with I was born in Connecticut back in 1948, a while ago, and was raised in Fairfield County, which is a very wealthy county outside of New York City. I went to a boarding school for 4 years and then on to college in Indiana, where I met my husband, and then followed him while he got his PhD. And then eventually I went to work for Xerox Corporation, first as a secretary, and then I moved into management and was in management with Xerox until about 92. And then I left Xerox and for the rest of my working career, pretty much worked in administration and did a lot of work with law firms. And in the process of that, we moved to Chicago. And then when we retired, we moved up to Wisconsin for 5 years and then down here to Texas because my son and his wife and two kids were here. So that's how I wound up here.
Okay, awesome. So I happen to know that you started volunteering when you were 8 years old. Can you tell us what inspired that?
Well, I think the inspiration came from the fact that I was very much involved as an Episcopalian at that time, as an 8-year-old. And I was following the example of my grandmother, who was very much involved in helping with community projects that she was in. So we had we sold uh, Kool-Aid and cookies in the neighborhood and had a little rummage sale and raised some money, and we gave that to the Red Cross. And then when I was a teenager, I had a job. When I was 15, I worked for the Red Cross as a volunteer. And then I did volunteer work in high school as well as in college. And then once I started working, I didn't really do a whole lot of volunteer work until about the late 80s when I was involved in the community chorus. And then later on, when we moved into Chicago, I got involved in community policing and community development. But it wasn't until I came to Austin that I got involved with working with refugees and immigrants, and in particular women.
What guided you or propelled you to begin Ladies Let's Talk?
It was 2017, I think it was, and St. Matthew's Episcopal Church that I attend was holding cultural dinners, working with another nonprofit that was trying to help refugee women make some connections in the United States community, in their American community. And so they worked with Hope and Sesame was the name of that group, and they worked with St. Matthew's to put on these cultural dinners where the refugee women would cook the food and people would buy tickets. The women would get paid from the proceeds of the tickets. And during the course of these dinners, there would be discussion to sort of enlighten the people attending as to what was going on with immigrants and refugees here in Austin in particular. I became really interested in that and went up and said, what can I do to help? They said, well, these women just need someone to practice their English with, to just talk with them. So I participated in a pilot program where we had 12 learners and 12 volunteers, and we brought them together for an hour or two to just have conversation. And that little program eventually grew into Ladies Let's Talk. I asked them after the pilot, I all summer was bugging them saying, when are you going to do that again? It was so much fun. They said, finally, why don't you do that? I mean, that's a good thing to always say to volunteers, right? Someone who has an idea, why don't you try that? So I did. I was very fortunate at the time to have one of the board members of Hope and Sesame, Laura Erickson, say, I'll help you. Thank goodness, because you can't start an organization like we have without having a good partner, someone to bounce things off of, someone to help with the workload, but more importantly, someone to get excited with, to talk with when you're down, to help you see a more rounded picture as to what you're doing so you don't get so sucked into the work.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. LLT offers programs like Basic English and Practice Conversations. Can you tell us a bit more about those programs?
The 3 programs we have now are all online programs. We used to have the Basic English program, which was an in-person program, which we had to stop. So we just have the 3 programs now. They're all online. The main program is English Conversation, and that is done by people registering to be either a volunteer or to be a learner. And we bring them together in a big Zoom meeting and talk about a topic, pick a topic for that week. And then we break them out into breakout rooms with 1 volunteer and 2 learners. And you talk for 30 minutes, and you come back to the main room for some more presentation, and then go back in for another 30 minutes. So it's a great opportunity to just do a one-off volunteer assignment. You only have to sign up each week. You don't have to commit to more than once. And of course, it's great for the learners because they really get a chance to practice their English, to make mistakes in a very safe environment, to see that there are other learners out there that have the same challenges as they have in coming to feel that they belong in this community. And for the volunteers like me, we love it because we get to help someone, which is always a great thing to do. But secondly, we get to make new friends. And probably most importantly, we get to learn about other countries. And for someone like me, where my traveling days are kind of over with at my age, I can meet with someone and learn more about El Salvador, or I can learn more about Syria or Sudan. We have over 100 countries represented by our learners. Every week you're meeting with somebody new from a different country usually. And so it's just a great opportunity to learn about other cultures in the world.
Thank you for sharing
So
that.
that is one program. We do have a second program that's called English Practice Partners. So the conversation meets for 5 weeks and then takes a 5-week break. And during that 5-week break, we have English Practice Partners, which is a program where we match 1 volunteer and 1 learner up and say, you guys get together, you figure out a good time, and you figure out what you're going to talk about. And so it's a great opportunity for both women to make a more in-depth relationship. And for many of the people who are in English Practice Partners, their partnership has continued for years. And I know I've got 5 or 6 women who I stay in touch with all the time. We have one final program, our third program, which is for our advanced learners. We have been so fortunate to have several volunteers who are certified speech language pathologists. They're retired. They said, we could really help these learners be better understood. We have many learners who now have the grammar, have the vocabulary, but people are always saying, what, can you say that again? Because they're not quite getting the vowels right, or they're having trouble with the consonants, or maybe the emphasis on the words. So they now teach our pronunciation workshops where advanced learners can work with. We have 3 usually that work with 1 speech pathologist for an hour a week, with very detailed looking at your mouth, seeing what's going wrong, and giving feedback to the learner as to how you might better position your tongue, exercises you might do with your mouth to build up muscles that you might not have in your first language that now you need. in order to be understood in English. So it's fascinating to see the depth of detail that our SLPs, as they're called, get into with their lessons. And so that's something right now we have a long waiting list for. And we're hoping to get more speech language pathologists to volunteer with us to participate in that program on the teaching side.
How big are the programs right now?
Our right now, we just concluded our 24-25 program year, and we have over 2,000 learners who've registered with us and over 1,500 volunteers all across the United States, every state. We don't have that many every week that participate. We have more like 400 learners who want to be in conversation in a given week, and we usually have about 150 to 200 volunteers who are able to participate. So big, and getting bigger every day. We have 6 to 7 new learners sign up every day, and 3 or 4 volunteers sign up every day. So it's been a challenge to scale up. We've been very fortunate in having a number of volunteers like yourself who help us put on our conversations every week. We have 6 sections of conversation each week, and we have to have 2 people running the Zoom meetings in order to make it technically work. So it's been great to have several of our volunteers step up, and we call them pilots and co-pilots, who kind of fly the plane while we're running the sections to make it be possible to just focus on making it being a very safe, very relaxed experience where people can try things out, where people can talk about their emotions and share of themselves and their experiences with each other to really help our learners get that sense of belonging. We're not teaching English. We are trying to make our learners who come to us feel that they made the right decision to come here to the United States, and to help them gain some more skills to start to feel more comfortable.
Thank you for sharing that. I am one of the volunteers, and I really like being able to volunteer, especially via Zoom, as someone who has a full-time job, who's a mom, who has a lot of other things going on. No matter how tired I am, and I start the session afterwards, I always tell my husband, "Wow, I am so glad I did that." It's so inspiring. You really get to know people, and there is such a sense of belonging. There's a lot of laughter in those sessions, so I highly recommend volunteering for this, and encourage that if you have time and you're able to sign up to volunteer with Ladies Let's Talk.
Yeah, I do want to make the point that, you know, I talked about all the volunteer work I do, and I really think it's important that organizations pay attention to their volunteers and they make it a good volunteer experience. And so one of the things we learned early on was that volunteers need flexibility. You need to be able to sign up this week and not next week. You need to know that, you know, maybe I'll be available in another month. And so we try really hard to just, first of all, you only have to sign up 1 week at a time. We do everything. For our conversation sessions, we're communicating by text, so that you can just ignore the text. You don't want to come and wait for next week. We really try to give tools to our volunteers. So we have orientation for you. If you want to volunteer, we have training for our pilots and co-pilots, so they feel comfortable dealing with the Zoom technology. We really want to make it as smooth and as inviting as possible.
Thank you. So you began volunteering and working on Ladies Let's Talk after retirement, after you had a second career as a jazz pianist. Can you tell us that experience of beginning something new after you completed so many years of work, what that felt like?
Well, I worked until I was, I think, 62 when I could get my Social Security. And the 10 years before I retired, I had cut back my hours so I could do the jazz piano thing. It was something I'd always wanted to do, and went out and got lessons and was fortunate to get into a band. And I think, interestingly, the jazz that I did, particularly towards the end, was all Latin jazz. So there I was doing sort of a cultural a cultural thing with that as well. And when we moved up to Wisconsin, it was hard to continue that because many of the players I played with were still in Chicago. I did some other things. I volunteered with an arts organization. But none of those things were really as fulfilling. And when we came down here to Austin, here I was, well, by then I was like 67 or 68. And I don't know, this whole thing of working with the refugee women just really appealed to me. I made a really good friend with one of our learners early on. She was from Iraq. That kind of motivated me to continue to work on it, I think, was, the gas that fills my engine is the personal relationships that I have with the people who I come in contact with, both volunteers and learners. And I also am an administrative nut and love me a good spreadsheet and love keeping track and organizing things. So it fed kind of that interest that I had as well. So all things sort of came together to have continuing with Ladies Let's Talk really be something I found very fulfilling.
That is awesome. Now, can you share a few maybe snippets or stories that were really inspiring, kind of continue to give the engine
Oh,
gas?
boy, I get gas, like you said, just going to a conversation session for 90 minutes gives you the gas for the week. It's amazing. But there's so many stories over the years that I've been doing. And of course, I mentioned the first woman I met from Iraq. She was dealing with a lot of trauma. I got together with her after conversation, and all through that summer, I met with her. She was getting ready to take her citizenship exam. And so we worked, we used that to actually work on her English. But, as she would get closer to someone, she would start to feel that she could trust me and share with me the impact of the trauma and what the trauma was that she went through. It's something she's still dealing with today, and I still see her today. She took a time off from Ladies Let's Talk and then came back last Christmas, and I don't think she's missed a session since last Christmas, and she is like on top of the world now.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's so exciting to see how, and she just says, it's Ladies Let's Talk that gave me that confidence to know that I can make it and I can make friends and I can have a life on my own. Her kids are getting older, so she doesn't have the kids. It's been hard. So that's one story. Let's see. I worked a lot with Afghan refugees when they came here, and was very concerned with the Afghan woman who I would set up apartments for and would talk with. I was really fortunate to meet an Afghan woman in the parking lot of Refugee Services of Texas. And she and her husband had just left the camps. They'd come over here during the evacuation. Her stories totally mirror what we saw on TV then. She's shared with me personal photographs that they took of standing in the ditchwater outside the airport, trying to get into the airport. They both had visas. They had all the paperwork they needed, but it was chaos at the airport. And they had a 2-year-old at the time. And they eventually got here. I met her in the parking lot and got to be very close friends with her. She actually came on our board at a certain point in time and has made a career working in refugee services here in the Austin area. And she's doing very well. It's been great to have Masuda as my friend. And but I got to really see the impact of her refugee experience and the impact on her little son, who really faced developmental difficulties that were driven from this chaos of a week or two. And actually then that was followed by months in living in a tent out in El Paso, and then coming here and living 7 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in a single bedroom while they waited to find and get some housing, and to have been part of their journey here in getting settled here in the United States. And it was wonderful to have Masuda on our board because she could articulate what it is learners are facing
Mhm.
and help us be sensitive to that.
Mm.
Um, Probably the most, I'll give a very recent experience that I had
Okay.
last night, because there's so many of them.
Okay.
Last night, I did an orientation for new learners
Mhm.
and had one learner who we weren't able to get the text to her. And so we stayed on after the meeting. And she said, I'm living out here in Bastrop. And I used to be in Austin and was able to take ESL classes in Austin,
Mm.
but no one would give me ESL classes now. And so I was able to help her with giving her ESL classes. And she said to me, she says, I have no voice.
Mm.
Without being able to speak in English, I
Mhm.
have no voice. And I almost started crying at that point because that just says it.
Mhm.
That says why Ladies Let's Talk is why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Is it's not just belonging, it's to also feel that you have a voice
Mhm.
and that you are, when I work, many times people use the word empower, but it's more than that. It's a
Mhm.
voice. And when you use that word, it just speaks to the heart
Mhm.
and how we know that, um, you know, how personally involved
Yeah.
you want to be in your community. And if you don't have English, you're just cut off from that.
That is absolutely true. As someone who came to the United States when I was 10, and I had to learn English, and it took me about 3 years, even though I went to school every day to learn English. Everyone thought I was really quiet.
And
And I
dumb.
never
They thought
spoke.
you were
Yeah,
dumb.
exactly. But once I learned English, I was a little paranoid. Nobody could get me to shut up. And it's because I felt seen for the first
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Being in a place, unfamiliar place with food you don't know, with people you don't know, a language that you don't know, cultures, customs that you don't understand, and assimilating to that, but also feeling apart from it is a very interesting experience and a very isolating experience, especially because people have all kinds of ideas of who you are. I still remember kids calling me names and bullying me, and I didn't really even understand they were bullying me until I got older. And I look back and now I can understand the things they used to say about me. And that was a really tough experience. And you don't feel that you belong. And I think about what we provide for these ladies. And I still remember some of the stories we've read, where some of them were like, I can say hello and I can say my name. And just how much confidence they got from being able to answer back to someone who said, "Hey, how are you?" And they could say, "I am good," or they could say, "Good morning" back, or those kind of
Yeah.
stories.
And the other thing too is that we're dealing with adults.
Hmm.
And 70% of the learners who sign up with Ladies Let's Talk have college educations.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they are over here and everybody thinks they're dumb
Yeah.
because they can't communicate. They don't understand what
Hmm.
someone's saying, and the other person doesn't understand their English. So it's really, really a tough situation. And I think that um, I speak a little tiny bit of French, a little tiny bit of Spanish, and maybe a little more German. But basically, I don't speak any other languages. And I think when I came into this business of working with people who don't speak English, I totally underestimated the impact of not being able to speak the main, the
Hmm.
given language, and also uh, not being able to understand anything else around
Hmm.
you. And it's especially true for someone who has been very successful in their home country. It's got to be so incredibly
Hmm.
frustrating to be locked out of
Hmm.
everything. And I think we have here in Texas, we have a lot of dual language for Spanish speakers,
Hmm.
but there is a huge class distinction that's made. And if you want to move up in your job and you want to be a manager and you want to earn more money, you have to have English.
Hmm.
And so we have a number of learners who come to us who've been here for a while,
Hmm.
but they've never, they want to move on ahead and they know they need to have the English in order to do it.
Hmm.
Um, we have people who come to us with all sorts of expectations and reasons why they're coming to us. And it's just so great to see the variety.
Yeah. One of the things I really like about the volunteering sessions and our learning conversations is really the practice of it, where everybody's coming into the space knowing there is no judgment. And so if we correct someone on, actually we say it this way, then they take it in a way that doesn't feel hurtful. Or even when we're teaching idioms, it took me, I think, out of learning English, that was one of the hardest things for me to grasp was idioms. I didn't really understand them, especially because in Spanish we have different ones. So that time when we're teaching people those things, I'm like, some of our idioms really do not make sense.
They do not make sense.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, that part of them that idiom is said, and they're able to understand it. Like, I remember growing up, and I grew up learning that drugs were bad. So whenever I pass a drugstore, my mind would get so blown up, and I would think, there's a drugstore and the police, they're letting this drugstore be open. Because no one taught me that drugs, it's a neutral term. And that there is such thing as a drugstore. It's simple things like that, that you learn by experience.
That's the sort of thing for a volunteer. We get a lot of volunteers who are like me, word geeks,
Yeah.
English geeks. We do crossword puzzles and spelling bee on the New York Times and all that sort of stuff. We love words.
Yeah.
And so to hear a story like that, it's like, oh my gosh, I've never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Those are some other sort of intellectual things that happen, as well as the hard things. There's all these crazy intellectual things about crazy English.
Yeah, for sure. It's an experience, and I'm so glad to be a part of volunteering. As we come to a close, I wanted to ask, what would you say are the biggest needs for Ladies Let's Talk right now?
Money.
Okay.
I think there's, we do this all online. So you think that would be, it's all these free apps. Well, they're not free. First of all, we do have, because we're dealing with so many people right now, we have one staff person. So there's the salary for the staff person. She is handling all the behind the scenes work, dealing with getting the phone numbers right, sending out the text, doing the follow-up on the text, putting the rosters together for the conversations, keeping track of everything, dealing with a day-to-day conversation. I probably talk to 3 or 4 learners every day, and then there's 3 or 4 volunteers who are also calling in every day, plus people like you calling in and saying, can we talk about the program? Yeah. So we need to have a staff person. We've reached the point where we cannot do it with full-time, with volunteers. I mean, I probably put in 40 hours a week as a volunteer, but I love it. So I'm not complaining, but it's not going to help us continue to deal with more people. We expect that in the coming year, we'll have another 2,000 people who will be interested in our programs, and all our programs will need to expand. So we need financing to cover that. We need financing to cover the costs of doing the texting. We used to do things by email, but as many of you know, it's a lot more immediate to get a text. And emails get buried. So that's why we have switched to texting. And of course, we have insurance that we have to pay for. But basically, we really do get by on a shoestring. So we can always use more volunteers, really encourage the volunteers to come, because it's just such a great opportunity to learn so much about other cultures, to make a connection with another woman who may have very different experiences than what you've had. And it really blows your mind sometimes to see how different life can be for someone else. There's really not a lot asked of our volunteers. We ask 90 minutes of your time a week and a little bit of your heart. We're not, we talk about boundaries in orientation. So that I know when I first started, I thought, are people going to ask me for money? I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do that, drive people around. It's really not going to be more than the 90 minutes. And it's up to you as to whether you want to continue that friendship. We do have some people who say, I want to get back together with the gal I talked with today. And we say to the other gal, do you want to get to talk to this person? And we'll make that happen. But otherwise, there are people like me. I want to meet someone different every week. Yeah. So it can be what you want it to be as a volunteer.
I know you are actively applying to grants and fundraising. Can you tell me a bit more about that experience?
Yeah, it's really challenging now. We had some good success a year or so ago, but now with the changes at the federal level, we are really in competition with a lot of organizations that were supporting refugees and immigrants that are now challenged for them to find funding. We are a national organization now, but we're really small, because we're just these three programs that we do. We're not like the Red Cross. Um, and so we have a lot of difficulty competing for the national level grants. And at a local level, we've gotten a lot of support in the past, but as we've become more national,
Mhm.
the local organizations feel that they need to support Central Texas nonprofits. And so we are put to the bottom of their list. So it's been a real challenge for us. We have been writing maybe 4 to 5 grants a month,
Hmm.
and we maybe are lucky to get 1 out of 10 that we write. And it's been a real dry spell most very recently. So yeah, it's a real challenge for us.
But there is still a way people can support by volunteering. So before we end, do you want to share any parting words or anything else with our audience?
Yeah, I really want to encourage volunteers to volunteer. And if we have anyone here listening who's for whom English is a second language and you're still hoping to improve your English, it's a great opportunity if you want to join us on the learner side of the table, as we call it. Volunteering is so easy. It only takes 90 minutes of your time. You only have to make a decision once a week as to whether or not you want to do it. And you can do it from your phone or your laptop. I'm sometimes in my pajamas from the waist down because it's Zoom. So it's just really easy to really make a difference in someone's life and also to really make a difference in your own life as a volunteer. Every time I do a Ladies Let's Talk experience, I come out of it just so buoyed up and with such a wonderful personal feeling inside me that my heart is connected with someone else's heart. That it's just so rewarding. So I hope you'll think about joining us.
And I definitely experienced that volunteering as well. Thank you so much for coming, Chichi, and talking about this, about the story of Ladies Let's Talk. And I'm so excited to continue volunteering with Ladies Let's Talk. And I hope some of the viewers can join me in that. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Angelica.
It's okay. Cut it out.